Carla, good evening again and happy Mother's Day. You are the mother of hundreds of thousands of people around the world, I'm sure, and have been maybe very busy talking to them. We had spoken a little bit beforehand, and with Carla Riechman, and I did post what you had written on your Facebook when I had mentioned I hope to talk to you today about your purpose on the planet. Everyone speaking English throughout the world with a smile on their face and laughter in their hearts. You have your own show that always starts with a little bit of laughter. Shall we do that now and have a little laughter? Oh, my dog's over here saying, what is she doing over there? You know. And we did talk about laughter coming from where and why laughter is so healthy and good for us. Particularly now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very important. We all need to laugh more. The people are depressed because they don't realize that the joy is inside them. And just by smiling and laughing, you're using the most powerful antidepressants you have in the world.
And that's kind of interesting now that we think about that, because it isn't until recently that we've somewhat been forced to really look within ourselves for our happiness and our joy and what makes us feel good. And a lot of people are having a difficult time doing that. It makes laughter even more important, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
sharing that. Yeah, yeah. Wow. So the other thing that amazes me too is just in the week of kind of watching what you do since we talked, is the amount of amazing people from all over the world that you speak with. And can you tell us again more about who these people are and how you get to find them or they find you?
Well, Rayhan Awawala basically introduces me to them. And I'm working with him.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Rayhan? Who is Rayhan? I've heard about him, I see him, but who is he and what does he do?
He's a very kind, gentle man who is determined to bring peace to the world using technology and conversations between people.
And so you help connect these people and have conversations with them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, and he's the one who's connecting you to them.
Right.
Where did the conversations go after that? What happens after you have these interviews and these conversations? What then does Rayan do?
There, he introduces me to more people.
I know.
That's what he does, and more people every day. He's a good man. He
Yeah.
means well, and he does good work.
Yes. Yes. He's
And
kind
it's
of.
also a way of people getting to know people around the world, just sitting in their own living room. You can learn about different parts of the world, ask questions about different parts of the world, and get to know different people.
Yes, it really is amazing. And the other thing that you do, that your goal is to have English being spoken around the world. Why is that so important to you?
Well, if we have a global community, we need a language we can all speak. And it, everyone in every country is taught to read and write in English.
Mhm.
So what I'm doing is not actually teaching them to read and write or teaching them English. I'm giving them the confidence to speak with people around the world in English. so they can come out and they can speak. And that's really what my show is about.
So how do you do that? How do you do that?
What do you mean, how do I do that?
With your show, when you do your show, what is it that you do, and to give them that confidence? What's kind of the format of the show that you do?
It's just talking. We talk to each other.
There's no particular topic or anything. People just come in and start a conversation.
Well, I've tried topics, and depending at the level the people are at, a topic may or may not work. It's more important for people to speak what they can speak about.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, when they're first beginning to talk, they can only talk about their families, or they can only talk a little about the work that they do. So to have a topic for everyone, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Now, what are the ages of people that come into your group to talk?
Anywhere from 5 to 100.
Wow.
Sundays are for people 20 years old and younger,
Okay.
and that's so they don't get the younger generation doesn't get bored and antsy. And then Monday through Thursday is for anyone of any age.
Oh, good, good. Now, they can find out more about your program if they go to your Facebook page?
Yeah, they can. Well, actually, they should go to the Speak English Foundation page,
Okay,
like the page, and then they get notifications when I am live on the page.
okay.
Basically, I'm there at 12:30 p.m. Sundays. At Monday through Thursday, it's 12:45
And
p.m.
this is Eastern Standard Time. You and I
Right.
are both Eastern
New
Standard
York.
Time.
I say New York time because people get
New
confused with.
York, New York. Yeah, yeah. And because I know it's important, you do have people who come in to speak English with you from all over the world, and don't you?
Yeah,
Where are some of the places that people will come to your group from?
there's a lot of Pakistani. There's a lot of Indians. There are people from China, Malaysia, Bangladesh. Somalia has been there. Nigeria has been there. Egypt. We took a moment to kind of figure out where the different countries, and we came up with 97 different countries. Well,
97 have been
yeah,
involved.
we made,
That's
someone made a list of how many people, how many countries, and 97 countries
that's
have
amazing. That's
requested.
wonderful.
I didn't realize it was that, but the person who made the list is a very exacting type person. And believe me, if he found 97 people, countries,
Countries.
it's 97 countries.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, like, what are your goals now for the next? Oh, it's hard to know for the next what, right? We have how much before we get out of lockdown, but what do you see for 6 months to a year from now? What do you think things will be like?
Well, I want to see more people coming to the show, more people feeling comfortable speaking in English. We have an average of 3,000 to 6,000 people who are reached every day
Wow.
by the show. And we average about 1,000 to 2,000 people actually viewing the show every day.
And they're viewing it on Facebook as they're
Yeah.
viewing it too, right? Like I did, yeah. And that's an amazing amount of numbers. It's beautiful. Yeah. So you and I had talked previously and found out you were also an educator. Uh,
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about what you did as an educator? And
I was a special ed teacher, and I
mhm.
taught children with learning disabilities.
How long did you do that?
20 years.
20 years. Yeah. What was your most favorite thing about teaching?
I love to teach reading, believe it or not. I'm totally rusty now. I don't want to anymore. But I love teaching reading. I love talking to the kids and encouraging them because many times special needs kids feel they can't do anything,
Yeah.
depending on what their parents have told them or other people have told them. And I worked at, saying, yeah, you can do something. And
Sometimes I wonder if it's really the child who has the special needs, the society that doesn't see the child as they are, who makes the needs, you know, because as a special ed teacher too, so many of the kids so smart and can do so many things, and yet they're labeled. And as soon as a label's put on them, it's devastating to children.
right,
Did you?
it's unfair.
It really
Um,
it really is, and if our educational system would just allow children to learn as they learn and to learn what they need to learn that's best for them, it would be so much healthier for our kids. The stress, the problems, the drugs, the suicides, be so much less.
it's sad that kids won't do that. It's very sad.
Yeah. So what can we do to help solve that problem?
Encourage kids. I mean, the last year that I was teaching, I had a principal that was a complete. I have nothing nice to say, so I won't say it. And yet, I had a child in that class. I had different children, but there was one child who refused the thought of doing any type of multiplication, and she almost was in tears when that subject came up.
Yeah.
And I said to her, you got to learn. And I taught her how to use a multiplication. I had these big multiplication charts, and I taught her how to use it, how to make them, and blah, blah, blah. And she started making her own charts. And at the end of the year, she was multiplying 3 digits by 2 digits. And if I had another month, it
Excuse
would
me.
have been 3 digits by 3 digits.
Go on talking. I'm going to mute myself.
No, don't mute yourself.
Well, the dogs are obnoxious. I'm sorry.
But those are dogs.
They are
They're
dogs.
doing their job.
Naughty dogs.
You call them naughty, they'll get worse. They're
Uh,
dogs.
oh dear. Anyhow,
Right,
loud,
Krishna?
with
They're
loud
dogs.
barks. With
Like,
loud barks. Oh dear. Do you have like um, a most memorable time as a teacher, or something that just really you carry with you for a long time? Or
one thing that comes back to me when I was teaching, the first year that I was in a very ritzy public school, almost like a private school, the principal gave me her office for that year. And one of the girls I had in the room was a very temperamental girl and very nice, but everyone had all kinds of thoughts that she should be doing this, she should be doing that, and no one sort of accepted her as she was. And she was in 3rd grade reading, maybe at kindergarten level, 1st grade tops.
yeah.
And she'd get mad at me. And what she would do was she'd crawl under a table or a desk in that office, which was small, and open up a book. And she loved horses. And I made sure I had some books on horses for her. At the end of the year, she was reading, she was in third grade, she was reading above fourth grade level.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you get the right hook or the child finds the right thing. You know, I wasn't a reader until I was like in fifth grade. I hated reading. I was very slow. I was definitely a C spot, C dick, kind of reader until my mother gave me a Nancy Drew book. And I took that book up into the tree house in the back, and I'm not sure I even came down much for the rest of the summer. My dad hitched up a basket, and I'd lower the basket with the book that I finished, and Mom would put a new book in the basket with something to eat, and I'd bring the basket up, and I sat up there and just read and read and read, and that's how I became a reader. You know, it's interesting to see what triggers somebody into the desire to really want to do something like that. And you
But
gave it
that year I had a lot of chances to do what I needed to do. And, the kids did puzzles, they did unusual things. They would dictate stories to me, and put it, I would write it for them to write it over, and they would draw pictures. We did a lot of language experience. We did a lot of unusual type things, and all of them grew. I think there was one child who maybe didn't make as much progress as the others, but all of them made progress.
but all children, like all people, don't make the same progress at the
Right.
same rate or reach the same things. It's a matter of whether they're reaching to their fullest potential and being able to be able to be, self-sufficient and have the knowledge to do what they need to do. And I'm sure that they did. Did you have any kind of when you left? You said you were there what for how many years? 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. You lasted 15 years longer than I did. Um, did you leave because you retired as a teacher and you were done teaching, or out of frustration from what you were seeing happening in the education system?
Um, I told you I had a really wonderful principal for about 6 or 7 years. I would never have left her. Well, and then there were things going on in her life, and she was not the same woman that who hired me in the school. But in the end, um, she was replaced by a principal who did not like what I did, and she tried to get rid of me. And I called the union, and I had the union behind me, and I was transferred out of that school to a school with socially and emotionally disturbed kids, where I didn't belong either, but I had some support going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that school closed, and I was transferred into a brand new school they had just renovated with computers and everything. And that principal did not want anyone older than him. If anyone was a second older, it appeared at the end of the year, they got fired. And I was one of those people. And what happened was, and I don't have this story often online, but I don't think I care anymore. I was one of the people who was fired, but because of a lot of the things I did, like I bought all my materials. I had such documentation of everything I did.
Yeah.
And it was quite funny. I bought a lot of my materials. I bought everything for the kids. And he fired me at the end of the year. And I went to the union. I said, look, I'm not accepting this because I don't deserve it. I mean, everything in that room I paid for.
Right. Well, he was expecting you to leave that there?
I don't know if he did or not. I took everything
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
the room.
Yeah.
And I have a small house. I put it in a friend's barn, in their barn, and those things are still there today.
Oh my.
But he and I said, look, I'm going to go for the grievance. Everyone else he didn't dislike as much. I think he just wanted special ed out of his building. It turned out that
Or he could have felt threatened by you. I think you and I have a lot of similar experiences as educators, and I wonder if when did you start teaching? If you mind me asking.
um in the mid 80s. But let me finish the story.
Okay.
So I was fired and I told the union what I wanted to do. And I thought it would be settled by the end of the summer. Well, for some reason, that did not happen. And I was looking at what I had gone through and how long I had been teaching in DC. And October 2nd, I think it was the 2nd or very close to the very beginning of October, was my anniversary date. And I would have had 20 years.
Oh.
So I came back to my union rep and I literally was working 24/7 that year. And literally every child in that classroom did grow. But it couldn't be expected that every child could read books 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They were, the highest level of reading was maybe second or third grade at most. And I said, no, I can't go back. I I was shivering. I wasn't even sleeping at all that year. And I went back and I said to my union rep, look, I know it's going to be a less pension, but could you see if they could consider letting me retire? Because I had always good ratings up to this guy. And
Did
I
you
had
not? Did
excellent
you not?
ratings.
Did you not question the fact that you were fired because you were too close to tenure, so that you wouldn't get that?
That could have been it too. Who knows? Because they were also trying to get rid of any teacher that was close to 10. I
Yeah.
had
But
tenure.
because you see, you and I are there around the same period of time. There was a lot of stuff that was going on back then, and I kind of started before all of the assessment, test, state of the curriculum, had really come into effect in '79. And so there were a few years there where you could be outside the box and teach these kids, like you and I
Right,
did. But then the walls of the box went up, and suddenly if you didn't stick to the rules that were within that box and within that grade level and within that curriculum, you were, a bad, and they wanted to force you out, so
well, that's what it was all about that
that's
year.
definitely,
They
yeah.
didn't want anyone who was tenured because that meant they needed to pay more.
Mhm.
And we had just gotten really good raises. I knew that that was what it was about, but I couldn't do anything about that. I didn't want to go back. I had literally I wasn't sleeping because I was planning lesson packets every day for the kids because I couldn't plan by the week because the kids were not able to handle that. I couldn't even plan by the day. I had to see how they came in
And
as
and
far.
and how I understand you not being able to go back. How did that make you feel as a person in how you were treating or trying to teach the kids?
Oh,
When
I felt horrible.
yeah, yeah,
I At that point my self-esteem, which I had really,
yeah.
he's been such a great friend, it has grown. But at that time I had a very low self-esteem. And for that to happen, it was like, oh my God, I'm not a good teacher. It The first year was really rough when I first went out, but I had no choice. I had to just pack up, leave, take everything that, I mean, I had a library in there for the kids. I bought new books every month. I had all the wall designs were things either I made or I bought. I
I,
had my wallet stolen that year by two of my students. And I know, I mean, I never was able to prove it, but I knew it.
I had
Uh,
every Texas instrument that they had out. Speak and spell, speak and math, speak and read, Alfie, Data Man, all along the walls of my classroom. Little cubbies where kids could go and use those. Then I had a double-decker reading loft where downstairs was the library and then upstairs was a loft where the kids could go read. And I mean, it was crazy and it was beautiful. And my other question that I want to ask you before we stop, because it's Mother's Day and my family is making me a Mother's Day dinner, and is from when you started your way outside the box, understanding the kids, the motivation in that, and then uh, from there to when the walls went up and you got put inside the box and so forth, did you see any shift or difference in the behaviors and behavior difficulties that you had with the children?
I had some really big. My last year was in a place in Washington, D.C. that was very difficult. Um, so difficult, it was unbelievable. Even the principal at one time said, I'm afraid to walk out further than the school. Um, it was dangerous. I mean, there were drugs, there, you name it, it was there. And the kids, I had one girl, they took her out of my classroom, they had to, but we I suspect she was 13 when I had her in my classroom. I suspect she was pregnant by 15, if
But
not
but
before.
I'm thinking um, more though, Carla, in from when you first started teaching.
Oh, when I first started
The
teaching
number
at that,
number of behavior issues and so forth that you had within the classroom, and then over the period of 20 years, what kind of behavior issues you had in the classroom when you left, from when we
well,
went to not having the walls to the wall type of thing.
well, I started with younger kids. My last year was junior high. So where they were just becoming, puberty was kicking in and sex was kicking in their minds. So I really can't judge that. But
Mm.
what I noticed, I had some problems with parents who were putting their kids on Ritalin and all the drugs, saying that, oh, this is how they learn to focus. And my thought was, no, I don't want you to do it. Although it sort of helped, but it didn't help. You don't want a child on drugs for the rest of their lives.
That's
And
interesting. Yeah, yeah. You
I
know,
had problems with that.
yeah, yeah. I did too. I did too. But you know, and I have, and I'll share this one story. It's one of my memorable children. Um, a boy who was really had some severe problems. He just, I mean, he couldn't walk past the desk without, you know, wiping everybody's papers off on the floor, and he couldn't sit still. He was, but
Yeah.
somewhere in there, all right. So it came to time where they were going to talk about Ritalin, and the doctor that he had was a very wise man. He said, we'll only do this using a blind study. Now, the blind study meant that, and it was time consuming, but the blind study meant that there would be 4 weeks in the study. And at the end of each week, the parents would fill out a questionnaire, I would fill out a questionnaire, and the child filled out a questionnaire. And all of those questionnaires were gathered together and sent to the doctor, along with the dosage that the child was on week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. 1 week, there was nothing. 1 week, there was more. We didn't know. Parents didn't know. The kid didn't know. The doctor didn't know. Only the pharmacist knew. So they take all of that information back and compile it and put it together to decide if A, the medication would work, and B, what level would be best for the child to be at to be able to function well. It was really amazing. So we went through all of that, and he was on medication for the last half year of his 3rd grade. And this child grew years in that short time, because now he could suddenly focus, and all of that he missed, he caught up with. Then in the middle of 4th grade, I went up to because he's now up in the middle school, I went up for a teacher's meeting, and the child came up to me in tears because they were going to take him off the medication. And I said, well, why would they do that? Well, my dad doesn't want me taking that. But I know what it feels like now to be in control. I know what it feels like to be able to learn. And I know what happens if I don't have the medication to help me.
I had that was the story I was going to tell. There was a young girl, great, so creative, and her parents were creative too. And she was put on medication. And when she was put on medication, she could then begin to learn. And that was important. She wasn't learning until then. The principal that I spoke about earlier, who I thought was absolutely amazing, I wish I could find her. I think she's in Florida now. She herself um, said to me, sometimes you need to be on medication and you need that help. And I spoke to her about this young girl, and we agreed that for her it was a good thing. She could focus. She ended up going to a private school, qualifying for the district to pay for it because of her disability. And I once went over to see her, and I saw her in the school, and she was amazing what she was learning and what she was getting.
Yeah.
So to say no to all medications for all children is wrong.
It just needs to be done right.
Right. If it
Eventually he was able to get off the medicine himself. The doctor had suggested, rather than he goes, just take him off the medicine, that they would back down on the medicine some. But he, at that point, had gotten to know what it felt like So when they pulled back, he could feel he was losing that control, that focus. And then he worked very hard to get himself to that level again on his own, on his
Right.
own. And then they could back it down a little bit more. But yeah, it was a kind of an amazing story. But it
And
doesn't have to be done right. You can't just hand out the drugs to hand out the drugs
right.
because you want the kids to be quiet and do what it is you want them to do. Carla, this has been wonderful.
Thank you.
I hope we get to hang out again because we have so much history and so many similarities. And I love all of the interviewing and the stuff that you're doing. But
I'm not stopping, although I have days that I want to say, let me stop, give me a break. But I'm not going to do it.
no.
I really I feel that I found my purpose. I found what I'm supposed to do. I'm good at what I do. Um,
And
I'm not
isn't that what keeps us young? You know?
right.
Yeah, yeah. And I love it. I love it myself too. Carla, thank you. I think though, as we say goodbye to everybody, we need to do it with what? We need to do it with a wonderful big
Well,
laugh.
we always end, my shows always end with laughter.
Yes. We're gonna,
So as I'm laughing, that's when I stop, I go off air and I stop the recording after I have finished laughing.
then
So
let's
if you want to
give it
do
a
that,
big laugh. Are we ready?